Well, welcome everyone to the United Lodge of Theosophists here in San Diego. And this is the Aquarian series. I'm Jonathan Colbert. So we have Dr. Patrick Horn here. So today our presentation will be on the real and the unreal with Dr. Patrick Horn. And our reading from the Aquarian Almanac for today is the visible world is that unreal realm in which the only point or purpose of breathing is a constant spirit of thanksgiving. That's in the Gupta Vidya volumes. So it's customary that we read like a devotional reading prior to handing our podium over to our speaker. And usually it's from the Bhagavad Gita or the Voice of the Silence, or it can be from anything really. It could be from the Secret Doctrine. But in this case, it's from the Bhagavad Gita. This is Krishna speaking. He says, "Perform your actions for me and with thoughts fixed on me, untainted like the sky. See yourself within yourself. Consider all beings as myself and adore them. Bow to everybody, high or low, great or small, kind or cruel. By seeing me constantly in all, rid yourself of jealousy, intolerance, violence, and egotism. Casting aside your pride, prestige, and sense of shame, fall prostrate in humility before all, down to the dog and ass. This is the knowledge of the learned, the wisdom of the wise. That man attains the real with the unreal, and the immortal with the mortal." And with that, I'm going to hand the meeting over to Dr. Patrick Horn. Thank you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your approach to things?
Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. Patrick Horn. I reside in Pescadero, California. That's on the south coast of the San Francisco Peninsula. And I serve here on the town council, and I work also with faith leadership on the coast across the region, and also nationally and internationally. I've been involved in interfaith action for over 15 years. That's how I met my friends and colleagues at the United Lodge of Theosophists through the Parliament of World's Religions. And they've invited me to speak on the Aquarian series several times. I've spoken on the Pilgrimage of Humanity, on Bhakti Yoga, and on Kalki Maitreya, which was a special commemorative occasion, the 150th anniversary of the Theosophical Society and the dedication of the new bookstore and research library, and I was kindly hosted in person there. I just want to, for those of you who weren't there, I just want to show you quickly here. There's a picture of us, if you can see, having a meal and enjoying informal conversation besides the program. So my approach, I am formed in the spiritual lineage of Swami Vivekananda, who seems to be looking over my shoulder at the moment. He was the star speaker at the 1893 Parliament of World's Religions. He spoke on several occasions to the Theosophical Society in New York on what is yoga and what is Vedanta, and he spoke at the Blavatsky Lodge in London on Bhakti Yoga. And it's not well known, but it is very true that many of his early supporters were Theosophists, including a devotee who donated the money for him to build the headquarters for the Ramakrishna Math in India. And so there is a relationship there. And so I bring to my comparative study a perspective informed by Vedanta and inclusive of many of the religious traditions. And I was invited to speak on this real and the unreal today, and I'm sorry that I could not be with you in person today. I have some other obligations that did not allow me to travel, but I really love your lodge there. The yellow walls are especially invigorating and inspiring, and so I had a little bit of time to, not much, couple of weeks to think about this very big topic on the real and the unreal, and so I'm going to dive in, and then I'm looking forward to interaction afterwards. How's that for an introduction?
Nice job. Nice
yeah.
job. Sorry to put that on you, but hearing it from you is very wonderful, actually.
Okay.
So thank you for that. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Very good. Okay, well, I'll get started then. Let's see, sharing my screen. And this little slideshow is to make it easy to stay on point and to give you something to look at as we move along. First of all, it's my understanding that the United Lodge of Theosophists does not typically put people's names on promotional items for talks, and I didn't ask for that. It's there, and so we're breaking the rules, it seems. So this topic of the real and the unreal, I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of my approach to this talk. I'm going to present Vedanta as a discipline of right view in a fragmented and overstimulated age. Vedanta names a shared human problem, which is that reality is misperceived. Across cultures, wisdom traditions converge on a shared insight that the visible world, while meaningful, is not ultimate, and that the undisciplined mind left to grasp and cling obscures contact with what is real. Vedanta is practical, precisely in this context. It neither denies the world nor rejects the mind, but affirms both with the right view. Vedanta diagnoses suffering as ignorance, avidya, and liberation, or moksha, is therefore not flight from life, but clarity within it. When misperception is removed, the world is no longer rejected as Maya, but consciously embraced in playful participation, or Lila. So the journey is from Maya to Lila. And mature non-duality expresses itself not as an escapist abstraction, but as ethical responsibility, compassion, reverence for difference, and gratitude, which is the social and spiritual basis of universal brotherhood. So that's the scope of the trajectory today. And moving on, oh, there it is, written out nicely for you. Okay, so why are we here? As the Theosophical Society, we have three objectives to form. These are on the screen. You'll see the three objectives, and in my own words, the first one is to form a microcosm of one global human family, regardless of differences and diversity. And second, to inquire with a comparative method into religion, philosophy, science, and I would add poetry. And third, to discover and fulfill our human potential, to realize the divinity of our souls. And so we have these quotes that open up our inquiry today. The visible world, this is from the Gupta Vidya. The visible world is that unreal realm in which the only right response is thanksgiving. Now I want to clarify right away a very superficial caricature of Vedanta, which sees the world as unreal or illusory, and therefore non-existent. Now, from our practical experience, if I kick you in the shin, you're going to feel that, and you can't say, oh, that's unreal. So unreal here, I want to be clear, doesn't mean that it's false, but that it means that it's provisional. And in this context, the world is symbolic and pedagogical, meaning it's a place to learn. It's a moral gymnasium, and it is dependent. It has no essence. It's in itself. It's dependent on the ground of all being, the ultimate reality. We'll get to that. And the second phrase from the Almanac, which opens up our inquiry today, is from the Voice of the Silence. The mind is the great slayer of the real. Now, that could mean several things. The problem here is not reality. The problem is our interpretation of reality. And the mind makes divisions and distinctions where there is only one reality, emanating through different forms of light and life. We take the appearance as real, and that's a mistake. We have to look past the appearance to that which animates the appearance to find the unchanging real. And that's again, the trajectory of this talk from Maya, which is typically defined as illusion, to Leela, which is divine play, participation, right views. So let's go in a little bit deeper. As I said, my approach starts with Vedanta. There is an epistemological Vedanta, there's an ontological Vedanta, and what that means is a toolkit. There's a toolkit of methods of knowledge, theories, and commentary, but then there's also an actual experience. And the actual experience, whether we call it Vedanta or not, the ontological Vedanta, is what we're seeking. We don't want merely a map of a journey. We want to take that journey, and we want to reach that destination. So Vedanta explores fundamental questions about the nature of reality, the self, and ultimate truth. For those who don't know, Vedanta is a universal spiritual philosophy that originates in India, but is not exclusive to the cultural context of Hinduism. It's based on the Upanishads, which are literally the end of the Vedas, the most ancient scriptures in the world, ritual prescriptions and codes of conduct and myths about gods and goddesses and things like that. At the end is the philosophical portion of the Vedas, the Vedanta, the Upanishads. Anta means end. Veda is a word that has the root vid, which means to know. This translates into Latin in words like video, I see. It comes into Germanic language in words like wit, and in English like wisdom. And so it's the goal of knowledge, or the end of wisdom, which is realization of God, the divinity of our own soul, and the recognition of that divine presence in others, animating the world. So we have, within Vedanta, we have variations among different schools, but there are three agreements of the three main Vedantic schools. And so just briefly, there is the dualistic school, the Dvaita school of Madhva. There is the more devotional dualistic school of Chaitanya, and this maintains a separation between the seeker and the divine as a personality for the purposes of devotion, worship, love, being in relationship. Then we have Vishishtadvaita, which is qualified monism. This is represented by Ramanuja, and this can be described most simply as the world is one. There are distinctions. As the light emanates and manifests through different forms, there are different potencies, so to speak, of that. It manifests in some places more apparently than in others. And then you have the Advaita school of Shankaracharya, the non-dualistic school, and this is where we get our definition of the real, which is that which never changes. If it changes, it's not real, and so Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta tends to be extremely severe in its discernment, and can be very easily misinterpreted. And so the intervention today is not becoming world-hating by saying the world is unreal, but learning to see the world as an emanation of the divine and entering into it with responsibility and as a play. So the three agreements of the three Vedantic schools: first, all agree in the existence of God, and that's a problematic word. Some people don't like that word, God. I do like that word. I've been preaching recently at the community church here in Pescadero, and I've had some people within the church tell me that maybe I'm speaking too much about God, and I thought, well, if we're not talking about God at church, where can we talk about God? But there's a very specific definition of this within Vedanta. We'll get to that. There's the impersonal, absolute, transcendent, and then there is the personal God that can be worshipped and is closer for a relationship. So first agreement is the existence of God. God there does exist. The second is a possibility of knowledge of God. We can know God. And to know God is to love God. And to know God, there's, depending on which school of Vedanta, if it's the dualistic schools, God is separate. And there's a even chains of being, hierarchies between us and between God. In the qualified monistic school, as I said, the divine presence is everywhere, and that it is more apparent in some places than in others. For example, in an avatara, or in a guru, or in a temple, you can feel and perceive that presence of the divine more clearly than in other places. And in the non-dualistic school of Shankaracharya, there is only that one reality, Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, and there is nothing else. So that's a very advanced view, as I said before, easily misinterpreted, and we can go astray if we don't study carefully. So the last agreement is that the apparent universe goes through cycles of creation and dissolution. And this happens at large scales. The entire universe expands and contracts, but also on smaller scales. In the pilgrimage of humanity, we go through yugas, different ages of mankind, and humans themselves also go through these phases and stages, rising and fall of nations, and so on. So these are the three agreements of the three Vedantic schools: the dualistic school, the qualified monistic school, the non-dualistic school, which agree, all three of them, in the existence of God, the possibility of knowledge of God, and in the cyclical creation and dissolution of the manifested universe. So with that third one, we can see already that the world cannot be said to be completely unreal because it goes through these cycles. So, in the great arc of philosophy in the West, we've got two sides. One's the Platonic side and one's the Aristotelian side. And on the Aristotelian side of the arc of philosophy, I think the esotericists would call it the path of the serpent. It starts from particulars and then snakes its way up to the top of the arc, trying to find the universals that explain the particulars. And this is where we get our empirical science from. On that side of the arc of philosophy, there's a gap. You can only go so far with that method of inquiry before it's not possible, without a leap of faith, to get to the truth. On the Platonic side, it starts from the top with first principles, universal axioms, and then down to the particulars, and this is called by the esotericists the way of the thunderbolt, from universals to particulars. And so I mention that because we have givens. On the Platonic side, there are givens. First principles, you could argue them, but we start with them as self-evident. And so the first one, only Brahman is real. Brahman is the word that's used to describe the ultimate reality. Another way of saying only Brahman is real is God is the only reality. This is from, if we use Shankaracharya's point of view, again, this would be very severe, and people who are on the path of jnana, or knowledge, can very easily become world haters, because if God is the only reality, then the world is unreal, and they try to negate the world, and that's not the lesson that I'm giving today. the lesson that I have for you is that the world is dependent on Brahman. It's an emanation of Brahman. It has no self-existence, and so the path of jnana leads to vijnana, which is a higher kind of knowledge, and the result of that is play, participation, development of character, development of conscience, development of compassion. The second axiom that we have is the purpose of human life is to become aware of and absorbed in Brahman. Another way to say this is the goal is to know God and to become established in the perception of that presence, to see God, to know God, to love God. And Sri Ramakrishna, who was Swami Vivekananda's guru, said the only purpose in life is to find God. And while that sounds very pithy, there's many ways that finding God could be expressed, and to know God, and and we'll get to that a little bit later in the talk. And the final axiom is, because we are ignorant and confused, we need a teacher to show us the truth, and the truth shall make us free. Now, ignorant and confused doesn't mean we're stupid. That's, again, something that could be an easy caricature or superficial understanding of Vedanta. Ignorant means that we're unconscious at first. We don't know. We took the world seriously as it is on the surface and got deeply entangled into it, and with all of our desires and with all of our ego and our identity. And so the ignorance and confusion is not a permanent condition. This is something that can be healed, and there can be learning and growing, and we're not at fault for being ignorant and confused at first. So that's those are the three axioms that we take seriously and self-evident. So then a little bit more about Brahman, here imagined as the lotus, the seventh lotus on the crown chakra. So Brahman has two aspects, a transcendent aspect and an immanent aspect. Now, this is where the mind slays the real, as a quote, becomes guiding to us. Because as soon as we put these words, we're making distinctions that are in our minds, but not necessarily in the thing itself. For example, when I say cat, that sound utterance, cat, is not the animal that it's referring to, but it's a reference. It's a signifier to an object. Brahman is a word that we're using very similar, and it is consciousness itself, the transcendent consciousness without an object, and the immanent consciousness, which is animating everybody who's living now, everybody who ever lived, everyone who will ever live, and there's nobody else here. So the transcendent Brahman is too high for worship, is what Swami Vivekananda said. And on the esoteric path, it's said by some teachers that it should not be discussed openly because it's too abstract. It can be known. You can practice spiritual discipline, Raja Yoga, and achieve Nirvikalpa Samadhi if you can hold your attention fixed on a single point for 6 hours without interruption. But we live in a time when it's very difficult for us to hold our attention on for even 4 seconds. So 6 hours is asking a lot. The immanent Brahman can be worshipped through an avatara, an incarnation of God, a guru. We can begin to see that in the hearts of others, in our own hearts. We can become nature mystics, and we can feel the presence when we are in the forest, in a beautiful place. So we have the transcendent and we have the immanent. In the Western Abrahamic path, theologically, philosophically, to know the transcendent God, we would use apophatic philosophy, that is negation, not this, not this, not this, or in Sanskrit, neti, neti, neti. And that's where jnanis, the seekers after knowledge, start. And in a period like right now, when we're having this talk, which is Lent and Ramadan, this is a time when people are practicing austerities, not for the point of turning against the world, but being able to see through the appearance of the world and reorient toward a vision of God rather than just of the world as a resource for our bodily needs and for our enjoyments. And so the path of negation is important to refresh our vision, to expand our vision. And then we come to that point of vijnana, as I was talking about, a higher kind of knowledge in which we understand the world to be the presence of the divine itself. And so let's see here in the next slide. Oh, it's a lot of text. This is related to Maya. And so we have this idea to reiterate that according to Shankaracharya, in the very strict Advaita Vedanta, only Brahman is real. And then the usual binary to that is that the world is unreal. Now, the Maya has two aspects. Samasti, which is the cosmic appearance, and this includes the limitation of time and space and causality. And this cosmic Maya is a lawful appearance. By lawful, I mean in accord with Dharma. It's orderly. It is not random. It is not chaos. And that cosmic illusion, samasti, is much more difficult to negate than our own personal ignorance and confusion. And so Swami Vivekananda says that the word Maya is generally used incorrectly to mean illusion or delusion, and that we need to be patient so that we have right understanding. Delusion is an early and partial definition of Maya, and I have some etymology here on this slide, that delusion is an English word that has Latin roots that are related to mocking, and the word illusion has some relation to deception. So this idea of the world is not what it appears to be. I think that there's a more interesting etymological connection in the Latin root ludo, both present in illusion and delusion, which is related to play or game. And again, back to my thesis, our trajectory, our path to knowledge is transforming our personal ignorance and confusion, that part of Maya which we have control over, into Leela, being able to see the divine presence and enter into the play or the game. And so the there is a classic, make sure I've got my, there's a classic analogy that's used in Vedanta about this Maya, which is, it goes like this. You enter into a dark room and you don't see so clearly. You see something that's coiled up on the floor, and it gives you a startle because you think that it's a snake, and you react like it's a snake. But when you turn the light on, you discover that it was not a snake. You mistook a rope for a snake. And this is how it is with the world. The world is not unreal. It's not what it appears to be. And so we have to look twice. We have to think twice. This is etymologically one of the roots of religion, actually, to read again. We didn't see it correctly the first time, so we have to take a second look. If we mistake a rope for a snake, we don't see the rope, and there is no snake. So it's very similar with the way that we misperceive the world. And so now let me catch up in my notes here. Okay, so here I have a dear friend of mine. His name is John Dobson, and he was an astronomer who revolutionized telescope technology. He repurposed a cannon mount to hold a telescope, so you could turn your telescopes and you could track things across the sky. And he was a cosmologist who reconciled modern science with Vedanta. And his insight, now this is not reductionist science, this is analogical thinking. His insight is that if Brahman is the only reality, and we see a world that's finite, divided, and changing, then we're seeing it wrong, because that's not how Brahman is. Brahman is infinite, undivided, unchanging existence. And that's all there is in the strict Advaitist point of view. So if we see a world that is finite, divided, and changing, we must be seeing it wrong, was his premise. But we can't see something different than what's there. So the appearance will take on the characteristics of the underlying reality. Very similarly to how the rope appears to be a snake, because they have similar coil, etc. The world ought to show through the reality of Brahman, the reality of the infinite, undivided, unchanging. And we just need to know how to look. So, for example, another way of saying this would be, if you threw a sheet over a couch, the sheet would take on the appearance of the couch and not something else. It's not going to take on the appearance of a Buick or a lampstand. So the infinite, the undivided, and the unchanging has to show through. In a very simple way, John Dobson said the infinite shows through in physics through the teeny weenies of electromagnetism, all of the dispersed particles across the visible universe. And in psyche, it shows through in our quest for freedom. So infinite shows through in electromagnetism and in our desire for freedom. The unchanging shows through in gravity, which holds everything together. And that's in physics. In psyche, it shows through in love. We're seeking to express fundamental unity, and we do that through love. And finally, the unchanging shows through in inertia. Objects in motion just stay in motion until something else acts against them. They just carry on. And it shows through in our psyche, in our need for peace, calm, and rest. So this is a way that John applied practically the concept that the world is not what it appears to be. And so he looked twice and he saw the ultimate reality, the Brahman, the infinite, the undivided, unchanging, showing through in physics and psyche in these different ways. So that's an example of how we can see through. Now, the affirmation that happens from this is that the world is unified and it is orderly. It is lawful. It is in alignment with Dharma. And this actually dignifies our differences. And the Dharma expresses itself both in the ethical requirements and the moral responsibilities that are common to all, but then there are special expressions that are based on our unique circumstances, our karma, our inherent tendencies and inclinations, what the Buddhists call personality factors. So each one of us within the cosmic appearance has our responsibility in Dharma, but we have which is common to all, but we also have our Swadharma, our personal and unique duties that are based on our Swabhava, are the inherent characteristics of who we are, our nature, our vocation, the consequences. So non-duality in this way dignifies and protects difference. And the tie to universal brotherhood is that one reality animates us all, which makes us all equal, but we are in unity without uniformity. And this is to be expected if the ultimate reality is infinite. There's many, many different ways to be in this world. And here we have the traditional perspective of the Vedic stages of life, roles in life, goals in life. When we're young, first quarter of life, this is our time of formation. Then we move into householder life, when we contribute meaningfully to society. And then we move into our senior years, when we're the custodians of wisdom and transmitting that to future generations. And finally, renunciation as we prepare to depart from this mortal coil. And spiritual maturity doesn't bypass life, it ripens throughout life. And we have these different goals. We have to fulfill the Dharma. Those are our duties based on our age, our place in the social order, and also the Svadharma, our personality factors, things that are unique to our own problem that we're unfolding in this moral gymnasium. We have the goals of prosperity, to be successful, create security, and provide for ourselves and our community. And in doing so, we can enjoy the good things of this world. They are meant to be enjoyed. And having enjoyed and fulfilled our duty, we are then able to pursue greater freedom than just what we need for our bodies and for our immediate needs. And so the insight here is that moksha, freedom, liberation, clarifies the other goals. It doesn't cancel them. And so I'm proposing then we have 3 disciplines as we move from Maya as overcoming our own personal ignorance and confusion to Leela, participation in the divine play with our fully developed character, with conscience, and with compassion. The first is discernment. We need to discern between the real and the unreal, and cling to the real and let go of the unreal. And this gives us clarity without cynicism. This allows us to affirm the goodness of the world, to participate in the world, it dignifies our suffering and our differences, and we participate without saying that there's no meaning, there's no value, there's no purpose, and we'd simply become nihilistic and selfish. So we need first discernment. Second, we need community. And especially in this time when there's so much fragmentation and divisiveness, we need to rebuild trust in small circles where we support each other in our common aims, fulfilling the Dharma, and our unique individual purposes. And in a group like this, we have those shared aims of being a microcosm of one global family, studying together religion, philosophy, science, and poetry, and discovering our human potential, which is the divinity of our own soul, the divinity of other souls, the divinity of this world, and fulfilling that. And then finally, the third discipline is contemplation, staying focused amidst distraction. There's a lot of noise in this world, and there's evil psychophysical techniques that are deployed to manipulate and exploit us, that are based on a knowledge of our own psyche, and that marketers and politicians, public relations specialists seem to know better than ourselves. So we have to make a very serious effort in avoiding mind wandering and mindlessness, and finding the silent center in which we can hear the voice of our conscience, form that conscience into compassion and service, and do that in a supportive environment with others. And so The practical work, this is the wisdom of Jesus telling us to feed the hungry. It's the wisdom of the Buddha telling us to heal ignorance, hatred, and greed, to learn from every path to truth, and to bear witness with compassion and imagination. Don't be afraid, take heart. This world, which at first appearance might seem like a torture prison, when we change our view, becomes a mansion of mirth. And what seemed like a horrible wasteland becomes a beautiful paradise. So, going back in closing to our Gupta Vidya quote, which says, "The visible world is that unreal realm in which the only right response is thanksgiving." We've clarified that unreal doesn't mean non-existent. It means dependent. It's not ultimate. It has no independent origination. It's an emanation of Brahman. And the only right response is thanksgiving, according to the quote. And I recently gave a talk on gratitude, and I identified to the Pescadero Community Church, and I identified 3 forms of gratitude. The first is foundational gratitude, which is noticing and acknowledging obvious blessings: a good meal, appreciation when somebody stops and helps you fix your tire on the side of the road. The risk with this foundational gratitude is that it's conditional, that we thank God when things are going our way. The next stage of gratitude is giving thanks in adversity. We show trust that we're being formed. Something is being formed in us through our suffering. We don't deify the suffering. We don't praise the suffering, but we recognize God's presence even in the suffering. And beyond that comes the mystical gratitude, the recognition that all is divine. All this is that. This becomes not just a belief or an intellectual slogan. This becomes our actual perception. The divine presence is the ground of all being. And rather than reacting to the waves of the ocean, we recognize the waves as the whole ocean. And so we're able to move beyond our ignorance and confusion, our own personal Maya, into compassionate, conscientious participation, play, and we thank God for the good, we thank God for the bad, we thank God simply for being, and in whom we have our being. And I do believe that takes me to the end of what I've prepared. I am very eager now to interact. I would love to hear people's perspectives along these lines. If there's questions also, I can attempt to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, very much for beautiful, comprehensive. Loved how you brought together really all the message of all the religions, even though it was under the auspices of Vedanta. It was very theosophical and very holistic. And I loved your kind of recasting of the 3 objects of the theosophical movement. how you did that. It's so universal and contemporary how you did it. I saw a hand start to peek up for a minute. There it goes again. Judy Saltzman. Want to turn on your camera? Or?
I unmuted. Yeah. Hello. Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Horn. I just wanted to ask you about this idea of Shankara. In some ways, has been called a realist in the Advaita Vedanta because even though everything is Brahman, and he's also been accused of being a dualist because Maya is Brahman's illusion, but it's still Brahman. And a lot of people don't like that or grasp it. But the real world is real in the extent that if we're in it, we have to live by its laws. And there is a kind of a funny story in Heinrich Zimmer's Philosophies of India I read years ago that Shankar was lecturing at a king's court and a wild rogue elephant broke loose and everyone ran and Shankara made it up a tree and wasn't hurt by the elephant. And when he came down, the king said, well, Shankara, if you say that everything is unreal except Brahman, how can you possibly have run from the elephant? And Shankara said, well, you see, sire, it's the unreal elephant chasing the unreal me up the unreal tree. Anyway, there are a lot of stories like that from Shankaracharya and other Vedantins. But what it seems is that, in a sense, reality is what we perceive of it. We don't perceive Brahman directly, although we really are that, as far as I understand the teachings of the Advaita Vedanta and these other sages, which of course there's Vishishtadvaita and others. But can we say, in a sense, it's very important that we live by the laws of the reality we're in? Because otherwise, I mean, you can't go off and jump off a bridge if you're on LSD or something, and people have done that and wound up committing suicide unintentionally because somehow they think they can escape the laws of the reality that they live in. So, do you think that that is a good way to interpret it?
Yeah, this is very similar to what I was saying, which is the world is not unreal, but it's not what it appears to be. And so we have to take a second look. I have seen the superficial interpretation by and caricature of Vedanta. Well, the world is unreal, only, and so I'm trying to get out of it. Well, this is very dualistic, and it is not quite accurate. When with Shankaracharya, as I said, he's very severe in his non-dualistic concept. Only Brahman is real, because Brahman is the only thing that doesn't change, and so anything else is unreal and non-existent. But the we have this idea of mithya, Sanskrit word mithya, which is very similar to what the Buddhists call dependent origination. This is something I also have seen among some Buddhists, which is they say, well, the world is void. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's ignorance and confusion. That what is trying to be expressed is that there's an interdependence The world is not self-existent. The cosmic illusion depends on Brahman as the divine ground of all existence. And so it's not totally non-existent. It's conditionally existent. I sometimes think about this concept from a mathematical point of view. How does a point without dimension gain dimension? Through relationship to another point without dimension, which is the first dimension, 2 points in relationship. That's what the Buddhists are saying when they're talking about the world is void. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's conditional. And this is the distinction I'm trying to bring in with the Vedantic perspective, which is we're not seeing the world correctly in the first appearances of things. When we see it correctly, we don't see that it's empty or void. We see that it's full. It's full and it's interdependent. There's a relationship, but there's this unifying center, the prime note, if you will, in harmony, around which all of the other things are dependent. And so Brahman can be known directly, but we experience Brahman indirectly through this world. And when we clear our vision to see this, then it's an enjoyable, even with the suffering, etc. And we don't end up what I have seen, like these armchair jnanis. They think they have knowledge, but they just hate the world. It doesn't exist. And they end up in this kind of spiritual bypassing. I believe that when you see the appearance for what it really is, that enhances your character. It doesn't annihilate it. It forms your conscience and causes you to engage compassionately, not to escape, not to bypass, not to intellectualize things away, but to enter into the play fully participating. And there are these jokes like the one that you told. There's a tiger coming, at you. Yes, Brahman's in the tiger, but I'm going to get out of the way, right? And so we have to use our discernment, and the world is not absolutely non-existent. It's conditionally dependent on that Brahman for its appearance.
Hey, Patrick, I got a question for you. You're on your slide about the rope and the snake. As you know, that's the classic example about getting fooled and also being reactionary. You could say getting triggered, right? Because think about how fast and how far the mind goes down the road when it thinks that there's a snake. And then you said, well, but when you turn on the light, all that stuff is unnecessary, about all the emotional response and all that stuff. You realize, oh, wait a minute, that's a rope. So thank you. So there's another analogy about illusion that Shankara talks about in the Crest Jewel, where it's part of the Crest Jewel that's called the Hymn to Dakshinamurti. And that's where and as you know, he talks about the importance of teachers quite a bit in that. And it seems like that one of the good things about teachers is that they're like a living example of somebody who knows how to kind of navigate this whole thing. And they're constantly turning Maya into Leela, just everything they do. It's like a dance. It's beautiful. And there's a certain grace. Now, there's one analogy that Shankaracharya uses where he says, he's talking about the difference between what's within and what's without. And he's saying, if you hold up a mirror and then you can, in a certain way, you can see a whole city in the mirror.
Yeah, with that axiom, because we are ignorant and confused, we need a teacher to show us the truth. And that teacher can be a living guru. It can be a book. It can be a friend who's a few steps ahead of us. Teachers can take many forms. In the Upanishad, it talks about the fire teaching us and a kite that was in the air teaching us. But it starts off with this premise. We're immersed in Maya, not just the cosmic illusion. The world is not the problem. It's our perception of it that's the problem. That's our ignorance and confusion. And we can try through many mistakes to learn it ourselves, or we can find a teacher, or the teacher will find us, who can show us the way. But all the teacher can do is show the way. The teacher can't do the work of walking that path for you. So there is an effort that's required. And so that I could, when I was designing this talk, I didn't spend much on the role of the teacher, but it is profoundly necessary. And unfortunately, we've been through about a century of teachers from the East and, all kinds of guru scandals and all this kind of thing. And I think that we thought we could absorb 6,000 years of cultural tradition in 3 summers. And we don't have the same kind of reverence for the spiritual teacher and cultural context that supports them as there is in a place like India. But a teacher is absolutely necessary, and it doesn't have to be the avatar, just someone who's a few steps ahead of you that can kind of you're going the right way, or hey, you're getting off the track a little bit. And that quote that you bring up from Shankaracharya, I wrote a song from that actually, and it's very simple. It says, "The universe is like a town seen in a mirror, like a dream in a dream, like a dream and dreamless sleep." And you see, we in the West, we have this idea that the waking state's the big thing. But we might have it all backwards, that the waking state is a deeper dream, and that when we're dream, we move closer to the real nature of consciousness, and when we're in the dreamless sleep, that's even closer. And think about it. You go to sleep and you rest and then wake up the next day and you've had this dreamless sleep, and yet you have a memory and you say, "Oh yes, I slept very well." How do you know? And so that poetry also gives us a little bit of insight into Shankaracharya. Of course, he was a great philosopher, the greatest non-dualist there was, and he made things so perfectly clear on the epistemological side of the
Yeah.
Vedanta. But on the
Yeah.
ontological side, in his life, in his mature practice, he was a bhakta. In a bhakta, there needs to be a sense of separation for there to be relationship and that love. And so even though he gives this great
Yeah.
epistemological approach to Vedanta and non-dualism, in actual practice, he was a bhakti.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? We call him severe, but in really his whole path is love. Who is the iPhone? You know what? We've got,
Oh, that's
technically we're past our time, but,
okay.
but,
That's me, Marion.
oh, Marion, please ask your last question.
Yes, on the story that was told regarding the elephant, and then it appears, I think you mentioned that the teacher, like, he ran up a tree to save his life, and then he was questioned about that. And so it seems as though even in theosophy teachings, there's many things that are presented that in really how to it's a more of a metaphor, it almost seems. So in trying to understand the teaching, it has to do with a kind of a figuring out or experiencing it, because it's not always apparent as these different stories that you've been telling, as in what these different because the reactions of the teacher are, well, of course we live in this world and I'm saving my life, so it's not linear. It doesn't go from the words to the life. It goes from the words to an assimilation and a perception and an experience of failure to understand it. It seems like. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think I understand. Yeah, there's 3 steps. First, we have to hear about it. And then we have to test it, and then we experience it for ourselves. Right? Those are the 3 steps in jnana, and I can tell you about my trip to India. You can look at a map, but that's not the same as actually taking that journey, going there, and eating in Delhi. And so that's what, and we get these stories like the elephant, the stampeding elephant, the rope and the snake, and it's meant to sharpen our discernment, give us that exercise in practicing discernment, but we actually want to see and experience what's being described. It's not enough to do the intellectual gymnastics. We want the direct perception of it. And that makes all things clear.
Thank you very much. I want to say one thing to Marion. Really appreciate your questions and how you try and unlock things and get to the essence of things. And the guy that made the presentation about the banyan tree, he listened to it, and he was very much moved, Marion, by your question. Just wanted you to know that.
Well, thank you.
When you talked about the banyan tree. Patrick, you are the man. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for taking the time. I know you got something going on within 12 hours of now. On to the next thing. So
it's an absolute joy. It is one of the, I think this topic in particular, because this superficial understanding of the real and the unreal has always gotten on my nerves, so to speak. And
I could tell.
So to be able to say it clearly,
right?
That the world is not unreal, but it's not what it appears to be. And when we see it right, then we play with our character, our conscience, and our compassion. And it's not a miserable prison. It's a great joy of life. So I really appreciate the invitation. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I do look forward to joining you again there in person soon.
Patrick, thank you very, very much.